From MotionSoft's corporate office in Rockville, Maryland, Happy New Year and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the start of MotionSoft's 2017 Digital Bootcamp Education Series. The Bootcamp is brought to you by our media partner, Club Industry, the most trusted media source for fitness business professionals, and the host of the Club Industry Show that will take place in Chicago on October 4th through 6th. You can learn more about the Club Industry Show by visiting clubindustryshow.com. My name is Todd Tweedy. I'll be your moderator for the Digital Bootcamp series, and I'll be your host for the MotionSoft Technology Summit. The theme for the Technology Summit is cross-industry learning and innovation, technology insights and best practices fitness firms can gain from the hospitality and retail industries. If you've never been to a MotionSoft Technology Summit, it's a little different. First, it's very informal. We have just under 200 participants, mainly club professionals, owners and operators, a lot of CTOs, CIOs, even CFOs. But it's a heck of a lot of fun, and it's packed full of education sessions. Last year, we had 3 keynotes from Samsung, our chairman from URSA, as well as the president of the Mid-Atlantic Cigna Group. The 4th annual Tech Summit will take place in Washington, D.C. on September 11th through 13th at the stunning Phoenix Club. It is a beautiful multi-level venue and just absolutely gorgeous. Registration for the summit opens this Friday, January 2017, and I hope you'll be able to join us. The Bootcamp series itself connects subject matter experts with club professionals just like you to discuss the challenges and opportunities of technology in the fitness industry. This year, the Bootcamp will run for 6 months. Sessions will generally be held on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, the theme mirrors the lead-in to the Tech Summit. We'll be looking at cross-industry learning in technology and focusing on hospitality and in the retail space. Before I introduce our presenter today, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded. Your microphones are muted, but you will have the ability to ask questions via the chat feature that I'll review momentarily. After your webinar concludes, you'll be sent an email with a link to download this presentation, as well as the webinar recording. Now I'd like to take a moment to ensure that everyone's familiar with the webinar control panel. If you could, take a look at the right side of your screen. It should be similar to the image that you're looking at here. And if you could please just click on the Questions tab. And this is how you'll be able to submit questions during the session. If you could just take a moment and familiarize yourself with the features of this tool. And if you could practice sending a question via the chat window. Try typing 2017 and click the send button. Excellent. Thank you so much. Looks like you guys got this down pat. Appreciate it, Rob. Excellent. Fred, thank you so much. Pam, thank you for your question already leading in. Adam, thank you for joining us today. All right. Finally, I want to let you know that the Q&A session with your presenter will be held at the conclusion of the presentation. If we run out of time and are not able to address your questions during the webinar, you'll be able to reach out directly to your presenter to ask any questions that you may have. Now, it's my privilege to introduce our bootcamp leader for today, Emmett Williams, co-founder and president of MYZONE, who will be discussing the latest news in fitness technology from the Consumer Electronics Show, key takeaways to drive additional ROI as club operators. Emmett's part of the leadership team at MYZONE that has helped put wearable technology in the forefront of the commercial fitness space. Emmett's recently returned from the Consumer Electronics Show and has some really interesting insights on what's happening and how operators can leverage technology. I also want to take this moment to just congratulate the entire MYZONE team on their overall Wearable Winner Award from the Wearable Technology Show. It's a huge honor, and with over 200 entries to win out in 2016, congratulations. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Emmett Williams. Welcome to the Tech Summit Digital Series.
Thank you very much, Todd, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone. I hope the audio is okay. I apologize. I'm working from home today. You won't believe it, but I got stranded at Mammoth Mountain this weekend, which is not the worst place to be stranded, but it was the biggest snowstorm in 6 years, and the roads were closed down, and I've only just got back this morning. which is why you may have heard a little bit of noise in the background, but I think we're good to go now. Guys, as I said, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to creating value for you. And I must say that the temptation was just to give you a photo tour of CES. I would have taken 100 photos. There was everything you could imagine at the show. The problem with doing that, though, is that there's no real value. When you go to those shows and you get wowed by shiny objects, by new gadgets, it's impressive, it's entertaining, but strategically, how does it work? So what I decided to do with today's presentation was to break it down into 3 sections. First of all, I wanted to look at this notion of innovation through the lens of an academic, to lay out the game for you and explain how innovation, particularly disruptive innovation, really works. I think the term disruptive innovation or disrupting markets has been the most overused term of 2016, and that was certainly the case at CES. So we will dive into that. From there, we'll move on to the photo shoot of CES, and I'll get you up to speed on the salient points, looking at it from the fitness industry's perspective. And then what we'll do is we'll kick it home with the how-to, i.e. how to make money out of wearable technology if you're a fitness club operator. So you can see we've got 3 chapters. The first one is how to think about innovation. The second one is the beat on the street. And the third one is the how-to of ROI. So with that said, let's jump into the first chapter. Now, I promise you, this first slide that I'm about to tip over to will be the heaviest slide of the presentation. It will get a lot easier after that, but I urge you to follow me through. What you should see on your screen right now are 2 graphs. If you look at the graphs from a 3D perspective, one is closer to you and one is further away. We will begin with the graph that is further away. This graph here represents a mature market, an existing market. And if you have a look at this grey dotted line, this represents the consumer. And over time, the consumer demands better and better performance. In an existing marketplace, the suppliers or the vendors or the operators compete with each other to race up market. The reason they want to race up market and provide this innovation is because that's where the big revenue number is, and that is where the large margins are. So the operators get together on this red line and they compete with each other to out-innovate. Think about a treadmill. Then the next year, think about a treadmill on an incline. Then the year after, think about a TV being added to it. And the year after that, a charger for your smartphone, so on and so forth. And because they compete with each other, they end up overshooting the marketplace itself. Think of a car that you may have just purchased that has many more features than you can get your arms around. Think of your smartphone. Think of a treadmill. A lot of features, and it creates this performance gap, if you like. Of course, the incentive is there for the vendors because they want that margin and they want that revenue. Okay, what that does is it frustrates the lower end of the market. They feel overserved, but also overcharged. They want a stripped down version. So a new entrant will look at the business model and they will try and disrupt it, and they will enter from the low end. This is where they will strip down or de-feature the product. They'll look at technology and ways of delivering the same experience in a different way, and they will deliver it at a much cheaper price. And I'm sure you're all thinking of Planet Fitness right now and what they've done now. As they make money at the lower end of the market, more competitors rush to the lower end of the market, and then they start competing with each other and sustaining that technology and moving up market. The incumbents that were at the top of the marketplace now have no choice but to keep on innovating and be better than the young bucks coming through at the lower end of the market. So low-end disruption is absolutely one key way to disrupt a market, and technology is not the disruptor. The business model is the disruptor, but typically technology is playing a role. The other way to disrupt a market is new market disruption. That is where you get an existing technology or an existing product or service and you make changes to it. You make it more convenient. You make it simpler. You make it more relevant to a market that is not yet consuming that particular product or service. Because it just wasn't built for purpose until it was, and then you've broken open a blue ocean strategy. So from an innovation perspective, this is the way we look at innovation. You are either sustaining, which is incrementally getting better and trying to beat out your competition and chase the top end. You are changing the model and you are being a low-end disruptor, or you're tinkering with the product and you're going to a new market. Let's now bring it back to the fitness industry so it all makes sense. 24-hour fitness, it's a good gym. Every month, every quarter, every year, they try and get better. It is sustaining technology. Incrementally, they are improving their equipment, their programming, their culture, whatever it may be, to get that bit better to win market share and to take their share of the revenue. But of course, think about Planet Fitness. They stripped out the sales team, they stripped out the basketball courts and the pools and the group exercise room, and they fitted out the locker room in a very different way. They stripped the cost out of it, they de-featured it, and they were able to go to market at $10 a month, and they are a true low-end disruptive business model. But then have a look at TSI, Town Sport International, which are the New York sports clubs and Philly and Boston and Washington. What they did was something different. They saw the low-end disruptors, and so they thought that they would compete with them. So rather than going up market, they went down market, and they stripped their price down about 12 to 18 months ago, it feels like now, for those on the call that remember it. They lowered their price and they tried to compete with Planet Fitness and Blink, which happened to be high volume, low price providers in their market, and it did not work. Why? Because they hadn't changed their business model. They still had the pool and the basketball court and the expensive lease and the sales team and so forth. You see, in business models, the incumbent, he who owns the space in the beginning, is better to stick to sustaining technology, and the new entrant is better to come in with a completely new model and to disrupt the low end. Of course, Equinox have done that very well. They have got the Equinox brand at the top end, and then they've disrupted themselves at the bottom end with Blink Fitness. Where SoulCycle is not actually disruptive. It's a sustaining technology. It's a way of making a good product, which is a spin class, a little bit better. And you see these guys down here at Blink, they say what we've got at Blink for 10 or 20 bucks a month is good enough. Now, in terms of a new market disruption, have a look at these three circles. In the middle, you've got the classic example of the mainframe computer. It would cost $2 million to buy, you'd need educated staff to operate it, and not many people had access to it, until the personal computer, which took this technology and changed it and applied it to the mass market. Now all of a sudden everyone, well not everyone, but a lot of people were now computing. Rather than going to a specific service provider and asking for your data to be crunched, you could now do that at your own small business. Again, a lot of people had a PC, but not everyone, until the smartphone came about. It was the same core product, but it was tinkered with, it was made simple, it was made convenient, it was made relevant, and now even that apprentice plumber or builder who gets on the bus and rides to work, even he is computing on that bus every single morning. He's paying his bills through Chase Pay and so on and so forth. An example in the fitness industry for new market disruption, and of course I'm a little bit biased here, guys, as the president of MYZONE, but it is MYZONE. It's a great example. You see, the heart rate belt wasn't new in 2011 when we incorporated. The heart rate belt really came from Scandinavia back in the 1970s. But what we did was we changed it, we made it more convenient, we made it more palatable, and we applied it to a different market. Before MYZONE, it was the heart rate belt was being sold to marathon runners and endurance athletes and some personal training clients. But with the way we approached it, we've gone after the masses of the gym members, because of the tweaking, and that was our blue ocean strategy. So with that said, when we look at CES and the innovations that come through, I urge you to understand this theory. It's not my theory. It's a theory that was born by Clay Christensen, who wrote the book Innovator's Dilemma. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, and it's just a very clear way of asking yourself the question, okay, there's a new innovation at CES, but how am I going to apply it? Will it be disruptive, or should I not be disruptive? Should I be sustaining my innovations with technology? With that said, let's move on to CES. Now look, CES is the biggest trade show literally in the world. 2 million square feet of innovation and technology. There were 177,000 people at the event. Just to put that in context, that is 15 times the size of the Ursa trade show. And there was everything you could point a stick at. There truly was. There were people wearing goggles, there were robots walking around, people thinking they were flying and falling off buildings. It was really quite interesting, but again, we want to walk through this with the fitness operator in mind. What are the salient points? What were the key messages? And how can we apply that? I will say that I was up there in Vegas for 3 days. I first attended the fitness technology day workshop. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was the Sport and Fitness Technology Summit, I think is what it was called. We had executives from Under Armour and Fitbit and startup companies and the like presenting, giving us their insight. And then, of course, I went to the trade show floor and spent a lot of time with the vendors. I think I'll kick it off by referencing Under Armour. Under Armour are positioning themselves to be the leader in sporting and fitness apparel, and they're doing it through technology. A lot of people would call Under Armour disruptive, but in all reality, they are an incumbent in the market, and they're just trying to sell a good t-shirt and making it a little bit better. They're trying to etch ahead of Nike so that the consumer will choose them over Nike. And further, they're trying to build relationships with their customers so that they buy more and more t-shirts and shoes off them. It really is that simple. Now, what they released at CES was their sleep score. Their message to the CES audience was that a lot of wearables were tracking sleep. How many hours would you be in bed for? But then the consumer was asking the question, so what? Should I be sleeping 8 hours? Does everyone need 8 hours? And is it just about the duration? They partnered with Johns Hopkins Medicine to come up with an algorithm that provides a sleep score. And it's not just about how many hours you sleep for. It's also about what time you go to sleep at night and what time you wake up in the morning and the consistency between that. It's about how many times you wake up through the night. It's about how deeply you sleep. And in doing that, they get a rolling average for the past 14 days and give you a score out of 100. And the whole idea is that, look, you might not be Tom Brady, who is the poster boy over here, but you may be an executive and you may have a big presentation coming up and you may need to be ready for it. And therefore, you need to get your sleep score up. Because you'll go into that meeting where you're about to close a deal with the right energy, the right clarity, so on and so forth. So they're trying to position themselves and sustain their own technology through sleep insight and develop better relationships so that you trust them and they can sell you more apparel. Speaking of which, the sleeping apparel that which they launched. They have claimed that they have developed a fabric that has secret fibers in it that will help you sleep better. So they were creating the problem with the sleep score. You know, you're going from 89 down to 82, down to 75, and your performance is dropping off. How can you improve it? Well, guess what? We've got something to sell you. Of course they do. This is commerce. Now, what does that mean for the trainer? This is a funny sort of photo, but over the last few years, I've been dealing with a lot of operators in regard to trainers and how they address the wearables coming through the front door. And the consensus out there from the operator is this: our trainers are experts at prescribing exercise. They could probably prescribe this movement that you see on the screen, but they know not much about nutrition and they know less about sleep. So why try and compete in that space? Under Armour and Johns Hopkins have developed the algorithm. They can give more insight than any trainer would be able to share with their client. The message being, focus on what you're good at. Under Armour also came out with a new running shoe. This is not yet shipping. I think it's shipping in February, I was told. It's the Gemini 3, and Under Armour are entering the world of exercise readiness. That is giving you an indication as an exerciser as to how ready you are to go after your program today. Should it be a gentle run, or should you go and do 400-meter or 400-yard sprints times 10, right? So the way they do it is this: you put the shoe on, you jump in the air 6 times. It measures your air time. It eliminates the 3 outliers. It clusters the 3 in the middle. It averages that number, and in doing so, it will tell you if you've got spring in your step and you should go and do that high-intensity session, or whether you should be a lot more gentle, just get on the cardio and watch some sport for 45 minutes and take it easy. Again, they're trying to progress past the basics of wearables, which is driving exercise behavior, and they're trying to give you what's called meaningful insight. That's the next layer that's coming through with wearables. Now, James Park, the CEO of Fitbit, of course, these guys were famous for breaking open a new market. You know, they got together an accelerometer, which was just a 3D pedometer back in the day. They integrated it with Bluetooth and with the cloud and with this notion of gamification, and they made the poor old pedometer world famous. And the pedometer, as I've said in many presentations in the past, was developed in the 15th century by Leonardo da Vinci. You know, it was designed to help Roman soldiers with mapping. So it's been around for a long time, but Fitbit applied that technology per se to a new market by changing it, making it more relevant, more convenient, and more simple. And his point here was the market's huge. People are spending lots and lots of money, and there will be many different routes that you can run to get an ROI out of wearables. The booth next to Fitbit was this one, Playbrush. It was only a little startup. It was on the corner, and I purchased one of these each for my kids. What it is a little device that goes on the end of your toothbrush, so it measures the movement of your toothbrush. You turn on the smartphone app, and the kids play a game. So now all of a sudden, brushing your teeth is less of a chore and is more of a game. That is what Fitbit made famous. The boring notion of walking more or not getting on the bus here, walking another 400 or 500 yards to go to the next bus stop. You know, that boring notion was all of a sudden turned into a game. And that is the heartbeat of wearable technology today. In fact, let me move to this slide. You know, this habit circle or this habit loop really sums it up. If you can provide enough reward for a certain behavior, then when you are cued to run that behavior again, your urge is so strong that you want to run the play because you know that the reward is there. So if the cue happens to be 5 o'clock on a Monday night, and you know that you go to the gym on 5 o'clock on a Monday night, if you're getting rewarded for it, then the urge to go there will be that much greater. It's the same thing they're doing with Playbrush. It's the same thing they did with Fitbit. It's what we're doing at MYZONE. It's providing reward for the behavior. Fitbit were very good at rewarding steps. And of course, at MYZONE, we reward something different, which is MEPS based on the beat of your heart, which is far more relevant to functional exercise and exercise in general. But either way, we're all doing the same thing, providing reward, and also cueing you so that you will do it again. For those at URSA last year, you'll remember Nur Ayel. I introduced him at the closing keynote. We sponsored him, and he spoke about a 4-step process. The trigger is an internal trigger or external. an internal trigger might be, hey, I'm going on vacation very soon. I need to lose 10 pounds. An external trigger might be, oh, there you go. It's 5 o'clock. It's Monday night. This is what I do. The action is walking across the road to the gym. If it's not convenient, it will be hard to take that action. The reward, in the case of a lot of the wearables, such as ourselves at MYZONE, it's a point system and status ranking and the like. And then the fourth step is investment, which ties into notions like status ranking. What we do is we reward exercises for stringing together months back on back on back, and they achieve bronze and silver and gold and platinum and diamond status based on consistency over time, which also speaks to retention. But the reason we did that was because we wanted to give them a feeling of investment, right? So that the whole integrated experience was one that would drive behavior, it would reward it, it would increase the investment, and therefore when triggered again, the likelihood to move to action was that much greater. Now, Fitbit announced that they did a deal with United Healthcare, and what they were doing was that they were simply beefing up the reward element of the habit cycle. So they came out and said, look, United Healthcare will do this. If you buy a Fitbit and if you jump through 3 hoops per day, and I'll show you what they are in a minute, then you can earn up to $4 per day to put in your health savings account. $4 a day adds up to $1,500 a year. I took a photo of the presentation. You may or may not be able to see this, but basically one of the gates that you need to run through is frequency. You need to take 300 steps in 5 minutes, 6 times a day, 1 hour apart. The next one is intensity, 3,000 steps in 30 minutes. And the next one is tenacity. And so if you run through that, you will get the reward, and that drives behavior. Now, of course, the 10,000 step rule is an interesting one. The Fitbit were the ones that made that famous. The World Health Organization and the CDC say nothing about 10,000 steps. What they say is that you should do 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes worth of vigorous activity each and every week, right? So that's what we measure at MYZONE. Moderate activity are the lower heart rates between the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and the higher heart rates are vigorous, the 80s and the 90s. Yet Fitbit have made this notion of 10,000 steps famous. And where did they get it from? They actually got it from a study in Japan back in the 1960s that drew a correlation between length of life and taking 10,000 steps a day. So it was a long way away, but either way, it's now mainstream and there's some momentum behind it. Fitbit are also diving into meaningful insight. They're using VO2 testing and resting heart rate to create a cardio score. Okay, so they acknowledge that they need to move past devices and that they need to make they need to transition their power into their software. They said as much, and the meaningful insight, i.e. how strong is your heart, is something that they now present on from a percentile ranking perspective. So you can see how you rank against your other cohorts of the same age. Again, meaningful insight. What other metrics other than steps can I progress to? The other message out of CES was that the wristband devices are becoming unfashionable. They were fashionable 5 years ago. Why? Because they were a status symbol. It was something on your wrist that said, look at me, I exercise, I've got good values, I work hard. And it also said, if I'm a little bit overweight, don't judge, because obviously I work out, because I wear a wrist-based device, right? That was the social experience, and it gave the user the emotional experience of feeling satisfied. However, then everyone started wearing these plastic devices around their wrist, and no longer is it elite, no longer is it a status symbol, and the sensors are reverting back to the traditional looking watches. So have a look at that over the next 12 months. There will be a real shift. In fact, there was a company out of Europe that announced that they will be releasing a ring. It's not yet shipping. It's quite expensive. It's $200 odd. and this ring is supposed to measure your movement and also your heart rate. You can see how convenient it is, but the big question is, who is the market at $200? You know, do your gym members, are they prepared to pay $200? That's the $64 million question. Okay, so we'll keep moving. Then this movement of artificial intelligence was spoken about. If you think back to the 80s and Jane Fonda, you know, exercise on video has been around for a very long time. Products like FitStar from Fitbit and also Daily Burn, amongst others, are more than just Jane Fonda on a video. You see, they're using artificial intelligence to have a two-way conversation. They're listening to what your goals are, they're prescribing you what you should do, they're listening to the feedback that you give them throughout the workout, and they're tailoring the program. This is truly disruptive. This is low-end disruptive. This is what Equinox did to themselves with Blink. You know, they went out with Blink and said, you know what, we'll just create a product that is good enough, that's stripped down, de-featured, and will meet the lower end of the market, because if we don't do it, one of these other guys will. Okay, it won't compete with Equinox, but it will attack the lower end of the market. This here is a low-end disruption to personal training, because not every consumer of personal training wants the personal relationship. They just don't. Sorry about that. They just don't. Some of them, the personal training relationship is frustrating and annoying, and they don't want to talk about their personal life and how busy they are today. What they're purchasing is prescription, guidance, and accountability. And technology is able to do that now. In the financial planning world, this was a great example. Financial advisors are now being replaced through low-end disruption by robots, meaning not everyone wants a financial advisor that has an expensive suit on, takes you for a game of golf once a year, knows the name of your kids, and sits down with you at their mahogany desk. Okay, a lot of people, you know, particularly under $1 million worth of net worth, they just want a robot to do it for them online. Log in, drag the money over, have the algorithm determine what my rebalancing should be based on my risk profile. I've got a college fund for the kids, I've got a retirement fund for my wife and I, so on and so forth. They're quite comfortable with it. Now, does that mean that financial advisors are doomed? No, but they will have to run up market. They will have to keep sustaining their innovation, chasing the high net worth individuals, and stay away from the low. No different to what 24-Hour Fitness and TSI need to do when Planet and Blink come up next to them. They need to move up market, because that's how they can compete. And this here may in fact disrupt the personal training market, if you ask me, but that's just an opinion at this point in time. The other key message out of CES was that don't worry too much about the consumer. They're not driving data at the moment. It's enterprise that's driving it. The classic example is Under Armour. You know, Kevin Plank's got a big sign in his office that says, don't forget, we sell t-shirts, right? So even though they've purchased all these technology platforms and whatnot, it's about selling apparel, t-shirts and runners. And they're using that data to get to know the customer better, so they can send the right message at the right time to the right person with the right price and the right product, so that it's efficient, effective, and targeted. So enterprise is really driving this more so than consumer. As an operator, that's a really interesting point, that you could benefit yourself earlier before even the consumer benefits themselves. Okay, another big splash in the fitness area of CES were Peloton. Most of you would probably be familiar, but Peloton, for those who are not, is basically a spin bike that you purchase for your home, and it's got a display, a touchscreen display at the head of it. And if you want, you can dial in live to a class out of their studio in Manhattan. So if it's 6 o'clock a.m. In Manhattan and it's 5 a.m. in Chicago, you jump on the bike, you dial in, and the instructor can see that it's Sarah in Chicago, and they can even give you a shout out. Your metrics come up on the screen. There's a leaderboard, and it's quite integrated, and it gives that sense of community. Now, you don't need to buy the bike. You can just buy the app, and you can get it for $35 per month. So think of those people out there that are paying $35 per class to go to a spin class, or maybe $25 at a flywheel or a soul cycle or one of these type of operations. And now for $35 a month, if you've got a spin bike at home, you can get a product that's not the same as soul cycle or flywheel in the studio, and it's not the same product as Peloton in Manhattan in their studio, but it may be good enough. And that could be a low-end disruptor to that marketplace. Now, at the same time, it could also be a new market disruptor. There could be people that don't currently spin. They just don't do indoor cycle. But because of the product and the convenience and the quality of it, all of a sudden they think, you know what? This is much better than getting up and driving to the gym and doing my cardio down there. I'll just walk down to the basement instead. Now, the reason I've got Dopey up on the screen is because of what the CEO of Peloton said. Really interesting presentation. And his headline was this: fitness marketers are dopey. Fitness equipment manufacturers are dopey. And that is where the gap in the market was. That is why we came to the fitness industry, and that is why we've been voted one of the most innovative fitness brands in the market today, because the existing operators and manufacturers are dopey. He gave the example of a treadmill with an athletic track on it, with this little orange dot that follows around. And we still see that at gyms today because we think it's good enough. And he's saying that that's very easy to differentiate against. So you could argue that Peloton are low-end disruptors. You could argue that they're new market disruptors, but you could also argue that they're playing in the world of sustaining technology because they've just released a bike for the commercial world. So now commercial operators are able, as of 3 weeks ago, are able to buy the Peloton experience and put it on the cardio floor so that your members, when instead of getting on an upright bike, they now get on a Peloton bike and have that experience, whether it's live or whether it's on demand, using the metrics and the scoreboard and so on and so forth. So you can see that Peloton have got, their strategy, and they've got a foot in many of the camps. They were quite happy to share their numbers, and so I will share them with you. This was on a public stage. I took a photo of the PowerPoint. We'll go through the left first. So they're at $170 million worth of sales in the past calendar year, 2016. The average rider rides 8 times per month, and their monthly attrition is 0.03% per month, right? Which is phenomenal. For those that did not buy the bike, those that just purchased the app, the average retention is 12.5 months. And as I said, they're entering the commercial space. If you have a look at the bar graph, you will see it just shooting off to the right-hand side. You'll see 3 surges. This is the holidays, okay, of each year. And if you have a look at last year, you can see that January was in fact bigger than December. And this bar graph here, this was December. So there's another one, I presume, that is bigger than this bar graph before it eases off again going into the spring. So these guys are absolutely rocking, and they're being accredited with being one of the most innovative players in the fitness space at the moment. Very good. Virtual reality was huge. I mean, you literally saw people walking around, and you had to be careful that they're bumping into each other. If you've never put goggles on before, VR goggles are an amazing experience. It obviously gives you the sense that you are somewhere else, to the point that you're standing on the side of a building, and if you look down, it's very scary. Augmented reality, for those that are not sure about the difference between VR and AR, augmented reality is a little bit, the example would be Pokemon, where you're living in your reality, but it's being augmented or added to through your smartphone, and you play a game with it. Do we think that virtual reality and augmented reality has a place in fitness? Absolutely we do. and everyone there does. The word on the street by the Peloton booth was that Peloton are looking at this at the moment. So imagine sitting on a bike, and rather than looking at a touch screen in front of you, you put goggles on and you feel as if you're in the studio in Manhattan. It is just a completely different experience, sustaining technology for what they're doing at the moment. I will keep moving. Those of you who have used MyFitnessPal, you know how annoying it is to input the food that you're eating. It just becomes cumbersome. Snap It, which came from the company Lose It, have developed technology where they can estimate what food it is you're taking a photo of. So this was me in Vegas at one of the steakhouses. I literally took a photo of this steak, and it gave me 3 options: steak, pork chop, fish, or view all. And I said, yep, that's steak. And that was a very convenient way of logging my food. Hearables are on the way in a big way. Wearable technology is growing at 20% CAGR, compound annual growth rate. The hearables market is growing at 170% CAGR, and the wireless hearables are growing at 500% CAGR at the moment. Early days, and if you haven't got these, for those of you with an Apple phone, in fact, I just purchased these last week, these untethered Bluetooth earphones. This is where it's going. And there are sensors in these devices, not necessarily the Apple ones, but there are sensors that pick up heart rate and accelerometer. The issue, however, as we move to hearables being both a sensor and also a device to display audio data, is the problem with batteries. You know, and this is the rub with everyone at CES. You know, what is it that we're going to do about battery life? Believe it or not, in a few years from now, we will all be wearing a pair of jeans, and those jeans will have battery stored in them, right? The fibers of the jeans will have battery stored in them, and when you put your phone in your pocket will recharge based on that. Furthermore, in a few more years from that, you will have a you will have a band around your chest, and this may be integrated into clothing, or it may be a chest belt itself. And as you breathe, you will expand and contract, and there is a 3% movement in your chest when you breathe. That creates energy. Think of a wind farm and a windmill spinning around. It's the same type of concept, and imagine that energy being pumped into your denim jeans, and imagine your smartphone charging off the denim jeans. That is what's coming sooner than you think, we are told. The other thing is that hotel rooms have been considered to be self-charged in the future, where you'll be walking around gathering energy, and you will plug your jeans into your room in the hotel room. The hotel will not provide the power, or they will, but like Wi-Fi, you'll pay through the nose for it. So that brings me to the third chapter of today's presentation, and that is, that's all great. Grandiose, you know, academic theory about strategy, all the shiny balls at CES, but it's 2017 right now. I've got a bunch of members, and I'm looking at applying wearable technology, and surely it's about more than just putting it on the shelf and selling it in the pro shop. And if you're thinking that, you're absolutely right. There are a number of ways to make money. One is through retail margin. That's buying a wearable device and selling it to your members and making margin out of it. That's a very, very boring and unsuccessful way to make money out of wearables. Another is to treat it as a unique selling proposition. You know, sustaining technology. We are better than the club up the road because we're integrating with today's technology. And there are extra benefits, extra bells and whistles, a bit like that treadmill I spoke of, that all of a sudden went on an incline, and then it got a TV, and then it got a battery charger, and then it got a fan, and so on. So it's a unique selling proposition. But where you really make your ROI is through looking at the membership base as group number one being onboarding. Those are the new members who are onboarding. Group number two being paid programming, and group number three being the regular member who is considering when to quit, and the play there would be retention. Now, just have a look at this circle here. Your customer is the far right circle, right? They're yellow, green, blue, and orange. That's their entire circle. The color is the customer. You are company A. You provide some solutions to the jobs that they're trying to get done. You see, they don't want to buy a gym membership. They have a job to be done. And that job is to lose weight so that they feel comfortable around the tribe of friends that they've got. That job is to decrease the risk of heart disease or whatever it may be. So you've got a program to help them get that job done. They're hiring you to get the job done. Now, the blue area is what you do similar to your competitor. And when you do the same thing, it becomes a race to the bottom on price. The green area are your differentiators. Company B, the competitor, does not do this. This is what you do. And to compete strategically, this is what we need to focus on. What can we add through sustained technology to not overshoot the market and provide stuff that they don't need, rather provide quality features and benefits that meet the customer's needs, so that they can engage with us and we can not only get more spend out of them per month, but we can get greater retention. Greater retention and increase the green bars and increase the lifetime value and have the ratio between lifetime value and customer acquisition cost as high as possible. That's the game that you're in. So how do we apply wearables? As I said, 3 populations. Looking at the new member onboarding, a new member joins up, they've got a goal, they don't currently have any momentum. They may have not been working out for quite some time. Your job in the first 90 days is to give them momentum, to get them into the habit of it. So it's like brushing their teeth, all right? And this is where wearables can come in and gamify that first 30, 60, 90 days by turning around and saying to them, look, we've got a device here, a wearable technology device. We've chosen this one because it's relevant to exercise. There's a million out there, but you're here to exercise. You're not here to take 10,000 steps a day. You're not here to play volleyball, and therefore we don't need to measure your vertical leap and so on and so forth. You're not outside riding a bike and trying to race people with Strava up a hill and around certain courses. You're at the gym. So we're going to measure your heart rate, meaning you can do anything you want inside this gym or outside the gym. Go for a run if you like. We will measure it, and then we will reward you if you jump the hurdle. No different to what Fitbit are doing with United Healthcare. That's a massive deal. And in their case, it's worth $1,500 to the consumer. But why not play a game with your new members to act as the sugar cube, if you like, to get the horse moving? There's nothing wrong with a bit of extrinsic motivation to get the wheels in motion. We've got clubs all around the world that are doing this, and the statistics are absolutely clear. Members who engage in gamification through wearable technology in the first 90 days will work out much more than those that don't. And the IRSA statistics will show you that usage in the first 90 days of a gym membership is a proxy for retention. So anecdotally, I think we all get it, but statistically, the proof is there as well. If you want retention, make sure they engage early, make sure you get usage, make sure you get them into a habit, and the best way of doing it is by playing a game with them. And wearable technology is far more effective than just measuring their visits, because you don't know if they're just sitting in the spa or getting on a recumbent bike and reading a newspaper. In the case of, say, MYZONE, measuring the beat of their heart and the intensity and the time that they're spending and the effort that they're putting in is on point. The next group is paid programming. So by paid programming, I mean both personal training, small group training, and team training. In the case of personal training, what is that client hiring you to do? Well, a lot of them, they're hiring you to keep them accountable, to give you prescription, to give you instruction, to give you feedback. In some cases, they're hiring you to keep them company because exercise is just boring. But for a lot of the clients, it's about accountability. And so if that is the case, if when you interview your personal training clients, they say that I'm spending $500 a month because I need someone to keep me accountable, why wouldn't you bake a wearable technology into the product and say to them, Mrs. Jones, I've got you twice a week. I've got homework for you. It's called cardio. I need you to do it. And guess what? I can watch you through my own smartphone app and make sure that you get the workload done. That is servicing them, and that is creating a feature that they value, which is accountability. In the case of, say, team training or small group training, what they're doing is they're participating in high-intensity interval training. Why? Well, it's not because they want to participate in the boot camp. It's because they want fitness results and weight loss in a really short amount of time. They don't have time. They've only got 3 workouts a week in them, an hour at the most. Give me my best bang for buck. High intensity, I get it. I get the benefit of afterburn and EPOC, and I understand that I need to jack my heart rate up. Well, in this case, adding a heart rate device to those services shows them that they are jacking their heart rate up. It gives them the guidance, it gives them the prescription, and it gives them the assurance that, you know what, you're running the play correctly, and therefore you can expect the results of high-intensity interval training. Beyond that, however, that sort of training is really hard. So creating a social community where they join in groups and pat each other on the back and tell each other how excited they are to see each other next Monday at boot camp adds that digital community factor that adds to the integration of small group training or team training, and it enables that customer to spend just 3 hours a week doing high intensity training to get bang for their buck. So it's not about wearables standing on their own, it's about integrating in the current products so the customer can get the job done, because that's all they care about, getting the job done. They do not care about purchasing a gym membership. And finally, let me get to the third population before we open to questions, and that is the general population. So that's the member that's joined up, they're older than 90 days old, they're not spending money on personal training or team training, you know, so it's not already baked in and integrated. They're just working out by themselves. And as we know, with people that work out by themselves, they will ebb and flow with their enthusiasm, and their visits to the gym will ebb and flow. And then what will happen is Thanksgiving will arrive, and there'll be a turkey trot on the Thursday at 7 a.m. And they'll say, you know what, I'll sign up to that. Yes, it's a bit of fun. Yes, you can connect with your friends and family, and it's a great way to start the day and get rid of a bit of guilt. But really, they're hiring that fun run to give themselves a reason to get in shape. Gee, it's the end of October. I've signed up for the turkey trot. Let's actually train properly. I'm racing my next door neighbor. You know, he beat me last year, but only by a minute. Let's start training properly. They are hiring the turkey trot to get a job done, and that is give me enthusiasm. Give me a reason to jump out of bed and train properly. So with wearable technology, you run the same play. You treat it like a fun run. You go out on 2 or 3 occasions a year and say, right, we're running a challenge. There's prizes to be won. Going back to this this concept of the sugar cube to get the horse moving. We will be running it twice a year, 3 times a year. We're giving away prizes. And what you do is, and let me jump to this one. What you do is you don't give the winner a prize. That is mistake number 1 when running challenges at a club, because the Ironman, the marathon runner, runs out in front and wins every single time, and it's over by by day number 7. Rather, what you do is you create a point system similar to what we've done with MYZONE, and you effectively say, hey, look, for every point you earn, you get a raffle ticket into the prize draw. And so therefore you're creating this chance of winning. And let me finish by saying that Kelly McGonigal also spoke at URSA 2 years ago. I introduced her at the closing ceremony there. She's an instructor, a personal trainer, but also a behavioral scientist at Stanford. And what she left the industry with, from a message perspective, was gamification. And she said, look, giving people certain reward is powerful, but nowhere near as powerful as giving them variable reward. Right? So Fitbit are giving out $4 a day, that's certain. She's arguing that if there's the chance of winning something big, think Las Vegas, think the lottery, then the dopamine receptors fire and the urge to run that play is so much greater. So in the case of a challenge, if you have one big pot for someone to win, but they don't necessarily win it by earning the most tickets, they've just got the most chances to win it, then everyone stays engaged and everyone is at their optimum level of motivation. So as we come to 5 minutes to the hour, I'm going to open it up to questions, Todd. But what I'll finish saying is that there are a lot of shiny balls out there. You've only got to go to CES to see that. But I urge you to sit back and think strategically and ask yourself, what are we going to do? Are we disrupting ourselves? Are we going into a new market? Are we sustaining technology? And in doing so, how do we drive return on investment? What plays work and what plays don't work? Because if you just hang it up on the wall, I can guarantee you, it will fall over.
Emmett, thank you so much. I mean, talk about packing a couple of days of CES into under an hour is pretty impressive. Attendees, this is your chance to pose your questions. I see a few already, but go ahead and use the question interface within the control panel. Emmett, let me start with Ursa. And in 2016, you introduced some new clothing tech, an integrated chest band into a bra. What's your plans for Ursa 2017?
Yeah, good question. We did integrate the bra, and that's been successful. We're releasing a new size because when you start with new innovation, particularly when they come in all different sizes, it really is hard to meet everyone. But we've done that this year, so it will be coming out in a lot more variations. But we've also got a compression shirt for the males because the males were missing out. So we've integrated a heart rate belt into a firmly fitting compression t-shirt. Okay. Now look, you probably want to be under 20% body fat, if maybe even 15%, maybe even 12% body fat if you want to feel comfortable in it. But some people are wearing it under a regular workout shirt, and if you're in good shape, you're wearing it itself. But to your point, this is where wearables are going. They are integrating into clothing, and it won't be too long that nearly every piece of workout apparel will have sensors integrated to some degree.
Let me turn to Pam, who has a question concerning a potential integration with Valadict. Is MYZONE moving in that direction with health data? Can you tell us more about Valadict and if you guys are looking at integrating?
Yes. Look, what we've done so far is we've integrated with the Apple Health repository and also Google Fit. We haven't done a direct integration yet. However, that is on the roadmap for 2017. When you're a startup technology and you've got a million ideas, you do have to prioritize, as I'm sure you all understand with your own businesses. And so we just went through the general repositories, i.e. we feed up to Apple Health, and then anyone who pulls down from Apple Health can pull our data. But tailored integrations are on the roadmap for this year, yes.
Awesome. Hey, let me jump back to Peloton. And as a former U.S. national cyclist, there was, I would never use that bike, but I think there's two things that have, kind of challenged Peloton. And one is certainly the performance of their heart rate monitors that they use, and the other is streaming. Now, there's rumors that the reason Peloton partnered with Fitbit was to address the heart rate monitor tracking issues. Any insights in terms of the effectiveness of a heart rate monitor that's wrist-based versus chest-based?
Yeah, good question. I think I'll speculate here and say that it was more of a marketing integration than anything. That's where they saw the opportunity for cross-selling and the like. What I will say about wrist-based devices is that they are accurate if you are doing something that's rhythmical, like a long, steady jog, or even on a bike, okay? But as soon as you get off the bike and you swing a kettlebell and you do a push-up and you do mountain climbers and you do a Turkish get-up and so on and so forth, the estimation of your heart rate becomes totally inaccurate. Because that's all it is. It's measuring the pulse at your wrist. It's not heart rate, it's pulse, and it's estimating what the heart rate can be from there, and it's just an algorithm that's making the estimation. If you go to the Fitbit website, they even say, hey, if you're doing boxing, rowing, P90X, they literally list it all out. If you're doing that, the reading will become inaccurate, and what we suggest you do is stand still for 10 seconds and wait for your heart rate to calibrate again, which is, of course, it's just not relevant if you're doing a boot camp class in a gym and you've got the big screen up and it's 45 seconds on, 15 seconds off. Having data that's lagging and inaccurate would just be disengaging. But to be fair to bike riding and running, yeah, those devices are not too bad.
Awesome. Hey, in line with straps, I've got a question from Rob who asks, what progress is being made in heart rate technology to get rid of the strap? For a while now, there have been hints that of the belt be replaced with a plaster type strip. Any thoughts?
Yeah, really good point, Rob. In fact, there was a group there 2 years ago. I'm searching for their name. It will come back to me. The AMP strip, it was. And they won an award at CES 2 years ago. And that's exactly what it was. It was a plaster strip that goes on your chest, and it had sensors in it, an accelerometer, a temperature gauge, and also heart rate. And they were going to be applying that product to the fitness segment. They won an award for it, but for whatever reason, and I can only speculate, they discontinued. I dare say, and this was what we figured, was that the price point, or let me go back, the total cost of ownership was just too expensive. You had to buy the device to begin with, and let's go with, I think it was like $200. Then you had to buy plaster strips, and you had to replace them every 3, 4, 5 days. And when you calculated that over the course of a year, it became really expensive. There's another group called CloudTag that doing a similar sort of thing, but I've noted that they've gone down the medical route rather than the fitness route. And I think that's because people have a fitness wallet. They are only prepared to spend so much on fitness, and it has to spread amongst the devices, the membership, the training, and the apparel.
Let me shift gears here, and I've got a great question from Fred, who's a club operator. Any advice for a startup small gym operator wondering how much of a burden it might be to integrate some of these various disruptive systems? I want to leverage them, but I'm worried I'm going to have to become or hire a systems integrator.
Yeah, look, good question. What's happening in the wearable space now is it's stratifying. Okay, so yes, Fitbit came out with their accelerometer on the wrist, and that kind of became the benchmark. But it's absolutely stratifying. Sports are getting really, really specific about what they're measuring. Bike riders have their own metrics that they measure. Runners have their own metrics that they measure. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, who is our audience? Are they runners? Are they riders? Are they swimmers? Or are they gym goers? And they are gym goers by very nature. And so, that's why we believe strongly that we need a product. Through this stratification, we at MYZONE want to own the space of the gym goer, because they do a whole variety of exercises. And yes, it would be great to move away from the away from the chest, because there's a perception more than a reality that the chest strap may be uncomfortable. So absolutely, we have looked at all different devices. We've looked at wrist, we've looked at earbuds. I mean, the hearables, we're watching them closely. They're great, but what happens if, with the battery life that's so weak, there wouldn't be the power to send the heart rate up to a TV screen inside the club, for example? Or what happens if you're in a group exercise class and you don't want to put hearables in your ear? So there's still some things to be played out with the hearables to see how we could apply that. We've looked at peak caps that you can put on, and it picks up heart rate from the forehead. But again, does everyone want to wear a peak cap? We released the sports bra, and we thought that the female segment would all flood to the sports bra over the belt. But guess what? A lot of them have said the belt is good enough. We don't need to upgrade. We're happy with our belt sitting under our bra, and the numbers were interesting. But the point is that your audience are gym goers. So I would take a leadership position as an operator and say to your members that are coming through, hey, look, we're here to work out, right? When it's about 3, 4, 5 hours a week. It's not about the other 163 hours a week. It's about the 3, 4, or 5. We're here to work out. We're going to be doing all sorts of different things. We're not out riding bikes and measuring cadence and watts and whatnot. We could be doing anything. And because of that, we're going to the lowest common denominator, which is the beat of your heart. We're turning it into a point system, and then we're going to give you motivation from that, but also insight from that. And from there, you can look at heart rate recovery, which is what a lot of instructors in the industry are doing with heart rate at the moment. They're jacking everyone's heart rate up at the end of a class and then saying, guys, stop and look up at the screen and watch your heart rate drop. And I'm going to measure you for a minute. And I want you to measure the difference between the peak heart rate and where you got to after a minute. That is known as heart rate recovery, and that is a leading indicator of mortality according to the New England Journal of Medicine. That's a key metric. They're the sort of things that we'll measure at this club, and something like heart rate is built for purpose, and that's the sort of leadership position I would take.
Well, my hunch is based on you focusing on folks going to the gym. Are you going to be expanding your programming and helping clubs kind of figure out training and the social value and integration to drive and nurture engagement with active gym members?
Okay, so do you mean outside the gym or inside the gym?
Inside the gym.
Yeah. Look, we at this point in time, we have, well, up until now, the last 5 years, we've all been about tracking and feedback and social connections, right? Getting people together. However, and you might have been listening in on our recent executive call, Todd, but we are announcing at URSA it feels like in 6 weeks from now, that we're incorporating virtual into the MYZONE system, and it will be different to regular virtual. And I really am speaking out of school here, but I'm the president, I can do this.
I love to share stuff you're not supposed to share.
Yeah, I'll be careful not to go too far, but what we found with regular virtual is that, yes, it's great. It's like, it's instructor-less. It means that you can expand your group exercise timetable, which means that you've got more selling points on the sales tour. It's fantastic. But when you use it, it can become quite vanilla and disengaging. And so what we've added to it is the two-way communication so that we can prescribe the exercise itself, and then the heart rate can be up on the screen, and you can be matching your heart rate with what the prescription is to ensure that you're adhering to the program. And that two-way feedback in our testing, we've found has been super engaging.
Well, with that, I think we're going to have to wrap up. Unfortunately, we've just run out of time. There are a few questions that we didn't have a chance to get to, and attendees, I'll make sure that I pass those on to Emmett so he can engage you separately. With that, Emmett, thank you so much for kicking off this inaugural Digital Bootcamp Education Series. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.